that I don't forget that important part. And let me introduce Julian here. We have a group of songwriters, artists, producers here from our online class, and they are really focused on writing for sync, figuring out the world and the business of sync and the world that you live in. And we can't wait to hear your world and how your day-to-day works. And really thank you for taking the time to share with us today.
Sure, no problem. I hope that, can you hear me? Am I talking? Okay.
No, you're great.
I hope that I can be of some assistance to everyone.
Of course. Yeah, you just I'm sure you will. You have already a wealth of knowledge. So why don't we just start with you talking about how you got started in this side of things and your background, and just give us a little bit about you.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Julian Wettlin, and I live here in Detroit. Not the biggest city for music supervision, but there are about 5 of us in Detroit that do what we do. So, I'm one of the 5, so I feel pretty blessed and that I have the job that I have, because it's pretty fascinating. To start off, I got into Donor at about 5 years ago, and I started in the pre-press world. My background is photography, so I went to school for photography and found out that finding a job in 2004 was really difficult. This is specifically here in Michigan, and so I was just looking for anything, and I ended up at Donor in the pre-press shop, which is the step right before things got printed. So I knew, since my background is photography, I knew about the whole print world, or some of it at least. And then I was in that position for about a year, and I got into Donor by my friend Fabian Halabu, who currently works at Future Perfect Music. They have an office in LA. They've got an office in New York. And he opened up that office here in Detroit. So when he left, he was working with John Mosier, who has a radio show here in Detroit on the NPR affiliate for Wayne State. And him and Fabian had this music department going, and when Fabian left, I was fortunate enough to be here when he left, and I had to apply to the position just like any other job, but I had to kind of work for it. But I knew nothing about the music supervision world, so I'm coming at this from a sort of an outsider.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about it. I knew that someone had to pick music for it, and I got introduced to John, and we became pretty good friends, and I applied for the job, and because I knew nothing about it, I decided to do some research. So I just went to the movies that I liked. I really love all the Wes Anderson films. And so I was like, okay, well, who provides music for Wes Anderson? And then, long story short, that was Randall Posner, and he does all of his music for Wes Anderson. And then I looked up interviews as much as I could find, just to see how he approached putting music to picture.
Wow.
Good. And found some interesting interviews. And then part of the process was to John gave us or the last the top 10 candidates. He gave us just a spot that Donor did, and just said, put music to it. I'm not going to give you rules, just use your ears and see what works. And so, I spent an entire weekend doing research and trying to find music that would fit this particular spot. and he said that I was the only one that provided like eight songs, 8 different songs that would work. Everyone else did like 1 or 2. So I just really wanted this job, and because I've been playing in bands since 9th grade, in really bad punk bands and really bad rock bands, and you know, you learn from all of those things. So I had that background, and then you know, I was fortunate enough to be blessed and right timing, and got the job. And so that's like a really strange version of it, but
it's an amazing version.
Yeah, it was fascinating because, again, like I said, I didn't know about this world, and then so I had to learn the business side from the beginning. The music side is just, you know, what you feel, you know, what you know, using your eyes and ears and like seeing how the music fits on picture. So that was the part I knew intuitively. The business side, you can learn. Anyone can learn that. And that's how I got here. So I've been doing this for about 4 years. I'm well connected with the Detroit music scene. The bands I've played in have been around since, like I said, 2004, playing at really bad bars, and fortunate enough to tour the world in one of the bands. And so I went to Europe a few times, West Coast touring, East Coast touring. So I've done, and what's amazing about it, the connections I made then are still people I know now that are actually, you know, adults and doing stuff in the music scene. So I never knew those two worlds would collide at one point. And then now there's lifelong friends that I know that I can call if I need music help or anything like that. So that's, oh yeah, Bowling Green. I used to play shows in Bowling Green all the time. Ohio. Yeah. Oh,
cool. Awesome. I love this story. I feel like your dedication to figuring out, learning, you know, adapting, doing your homework, showing up above and beyond, and what you have to show for it, you know, like really, that's the name of the game.
Yeah, it really is. A lot of it is just making sure that you are, this is a cliche, but just your own self, just being yourself, and then you know, the rest of the world will catch up.
Yeah,
that's the way I feel. What instruments do I play? I play bass. I try to play guitar, and I use Ableton. I'm still learning how to use Ableton. Now, I should say from the beginning, I am not a trained musician. I learned everything I know how to do by ear, which can be challenging at sometimes. But like for me, when people would try to teach me sheet music, especially playing bass, I would just hear the note, and instead of like reading the music, I could just say, oh, well, give me 10 minutes and I could just find the notes. And then I would find the notes, and then that would be it. So the first songs I learned were Nirvana songs, some really bad punk songs, some Green Day songs. And those were more, you know, trying to play with speed. And then you learn as a kid how to do that by ear. And then as I grew older, my music taste changed. So then I started getting into like Talking Heads and like Television and like all those weird like art rock bands. And then, you know, that's just a short way of, that's where my music arc went. Now, most of the music world is electronic. So like part of me learning Ableton is learning how to adapt and how to produce music on my own, you know, on a computer rather than, it's much easier now. Like my bands, we would have to book studio time, and that would cost a crazy amount of money. And then, fast forward to now, you could do everything on your computer, and it's kind of where we are right now.
It's true. I mean, it's amazing, really, what you can do on your computer, and I think that everybody on this call can attest to that. It's like whether you have the setup or your friend has the setup, and you have a couple people work on something, but there's no excuse for not getting things done because it's at your fingertips these days. So, so you have a really beautiful background, which I think really helps inform, even though you had no idea about music supervision, you were coming from it as a musician with somebody with ears to really help inform the decisions you made. So what does your day-to-day look like at the agency you work at? And also, I'll start with that.
So I'm at Donor Advertising. So Donor has the headquarters is in Southfield, just a suburb of Detroit. We have a small LA office. You also have a London office, and then a few smaller offices in Atlanta and Ohio. So we work on tons of brands. That's sort of the benefit of what Donor does, because a lot of Detroit agencies are held up by the car industry.
Yeah.
Ford, GM. We do have FCA, but that's not our main source. We branch it out. So we have Smithfield, Bacon. I wrote some of these down. Where did I put it? We work with JBL, Alpha, Jeep, Ram, Beaumont, Smithfield, Cox. So we work with a ton of different brands. And that's a benefit because each of these brands has a sonic identity, right?
Yeah.
So, that for me, I have to, one of the very first things that I learned is I can't put my personal influence on what the job needs, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all about the job. Whatever project you're working on, if it calls for polka music, then I have to find the best version of that I need to find. I may not listen to polka music in my personal life, but like it's all about the job, and I have to take my personal, color out of it, because one thing, especially at an agency, there's so many people there's so many hoops you have to jump through, right? So you have to please the creative team. And once you please the creative team, you have to, please the art directors, and then the big boss guys at Donor. And then once you please everyone at Donor, then you go to the client side. Then you have to please the client and all the people that have a voice in choosing, in our case, music. So there's a lot of people involved in one specific thing. And so I can't, on most projects, I can't influence it, right? So I just have to find what's best for the job and what I think works the best. So that's the overview of what we do. But for the most part, we find music for a lot of new business pitches. So anything, if we're pitching new business, we're making a video, I have to find the tone and energy that will fit for this sizzle, what we call a sizzle reel. Most of it, and sometimes I can use, just normal major label, instrumentals for that stuff, because that's not going out to the world. These are just rips. So we just, put anything that we think fits. The other half is listening to a lot of stock music. And I saw someone asked what kind of music libraries.
Yeah.
I go to as far as stock music is concerned, I have and again, it depends on what I'm working on. So if I'm working on Beaumont and they want like an acoustic vibe, oh, sorry, let me back. Stock music meaning instrumental. Stock music meaning not cheap music, because it's not necessarily cheap, but like it's music that is free and clear of royalties, right? So places like Killer Tracks, APM, DeWolf, a lot of these stock music companies have been around since, specifically DeWolf, have been around since the 60s. And they have some really cool, interesting music that was that was recorded on reel to reel. And you can go there, license a track, depending on what you're trying to buy it for, but you can spend like $500-600 on a track and have that for that term, just like normal licenses, but you don't have to pay royalty money on that because there's no vocals on most of that stuff. So that's what I mean by music libraries. Where was I? I forgot what I was saying. Day to day. So stock music is a path. The major label, Sony, Universal, all the big guys. Those are who we tap. Catch the Moon, music agencies are also places where we grab music, and custom, in which a lot about, is the custom music side, and there's other times where we just get stuff written for us. I guess this is a question. Where's everyone on the whole music licensing royalty? I assume that you guys covered that at some point.
In what regard are you?
Just like they know. Does everyone know the process of like licensing tracks?
No. Why don't we go through it? I mean, in different ways. I think we've talked about it, but Let's see. Yeah, let's talk about it from your angle.
Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on questions here.
I'll also watch them for you.
Oh, okay. So everyone knows, we'll just start from the beginning. The first thing I found out, that music has two sides. You have the master side and the publishing side.
Yeah.
And, so depending on the project, just say the project we need to license Beyonce. Just say a Beyonce track for some reason, which would be crazy amount of money.
How much would that be?
Beyonce would probably in the several millions of dollars to license a track. But just say she was in a nice mood and she was going to let us have a song of hers for $1,000, just for an example. So if the master costs $1,000, 9 times out of 10, the publishing side is going to cost $1,000. So to get that track, you would have to pay $2,000 all in. Now there are cases where you can make your own version just by licensing the publishing, right? So if I want to use that Beyonce song but make it in the 50 Shades of Grey, right? Mm-hmm. So if people are familiar with 50 Shades of Grey, they use the Beyonce song, but they made a completely different version of Crazy Right Now. And it was like slow and dramatic and fit perfectly with the 50 Shades of Grey. So whoever did that just licensed the publishing side of it, and then they made their own version of it. So there are other ways to do that, especially on the agency side. It's just licensing the publishing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk about that in different ways, but it's always interesting to hear how it works from like the agency side. What you have to clear, your business side of things, so that they're aware of what they need to have in a row for you to make your job
Yeah.
easier?
Yeah. Sorry, what was the question again? I almost forgot.
Well, no, just to continue what you were
Oh.
talking about, but to like, I think that they have the, you know, the general idea. We do talk about different sides, but just to understand what are you looking for when you're licensing? What are the steps that you're going through that you need, the mark that you have to check off, that if, you know, an artist comes to you, it's easier for you to clear it.
So and you know, again, it goes back to like the project or job. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? Is it like Smithfield has more of a like a folky acoustic-y side, right?
Yeah.
So depending on the spot, if it's more heartfelt or if it's just more like a generic acoustic song, then we'll go to certain music houses that do that really well. But if it's like JBL and it's like, it's, you know, on the verge of hip hop or like electronic, then there's specific music houses that we'll go to achieve that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like we'll move depending on what the project is calling for. And as far as, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead and finish your train of thought.
So when we're searching for music, for me, I go through it so fast now that I've been doing it for like a few years, and it's really production, right? Like it comes down to, for me, like I can tell the difference just speaking in like even just an acoustic, you know, simple acoustic song, you know, there's two versions of it, one, and I can tell the difference between how warm it is, right? Like you can like, depending on, and you know, guitar players can tell you this, like a Fender Strat sounds different than a Gibson, and real drums sound way different than fake drums. And like when I've had this before where I would get music and I'm like, these drums have zero life to them. And when you really start to listen, like you're like, man, these drums sound really flat. And when production is flat, I'm like, next, like I want, because for me, I want to find, and even in the stock music and stock libraries, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff. And for me, like it comes down to the production. That's one of the criteria that I look for, right?
That's awesome.
It's like really, really good production. Like warm drums, if it's a acoustic guitar, it needs to sound not tinny, right? Not like too much high end. It needs to be like a warm, production on it. As far as like anything electronic, there's so much electronic out there, but I can tell the difference between like a good 808 kick drum and a bad one. Like, and I'm sure you've run across this with producing your own music, is like, layering things, right? Like, so you have, just say your kick drum will maybe have like 3 or 4 kicks on it. Like you have you hit all the tonal ranges. And with that, you get so much depth, like John Bonham's drums sound way better than like the Imagine Dragons drums, right? Like to me, like there's a warmth to the way they did it in the past, like, on the Zeppelin records or the Beatles records, like all those drums and guitars and bass sounded really, really great. And then now the production is shifting and people are trying to, I mean, that's not to say that you can't achieve those sounds with digital stuff, because the more plugins that are coming out now are sounding really, really great as far as reverbs and compressions and stuff like that. But some people just know how to use them right, and that getting into those details and learning how to use compression, you can fool a lot of, like music supervisors. Like if you do it and just learning the craft instead of just turning on your computer and then just kicking something out of your computer. I talk about it like photography, right? Like back in the 2000s when digital cameras came out, everyone thought that, cameras are cheap and like anyone's a professional photographer now. And like, then you start seeing like of people's work and you're like, is that really good? And like, they're getting a lot of money, but that stuff is not very good. And then now it's coming back to like, just because you have a digital camera doesn't make you a photographer. There still is a skill to be had, right? Like, it still takes framing. It still takes understanding how to take a picture. And the same goes with music. Just because you can produce an album off of your Mac computer doesn't mean that you are a crazy producer. There's still some skill left to learn. You still have to know how to use compression. You still have to like know how to write a song. There's still like stuff to be learned. And once you know the rules, then, you could break them like Brian Eno and all those guys. But I think it's coming back around to knowing what's a good song.
I think that's such a incredible, two things that you've said, like, well, three, knowing it's a good song, doing the work, knowing your craft, really doing the work to be good at what you do, not just, filling in the holes with MIDI and understanding what it is that you're creating. It's really high quality production is going far. It's not just like get the song done and finish. And that's something that we talk about a lot in this class. And I think that those are such really good points to drive home.
And that's not the, again, I say all of that. There are exceptions, right? Like even electronic music, which comes out of a box, comes out of a computer, you can make sound, you can make the music sound warm and awesome. Like, I'm not really into the whole Skrillex type of stuff, but like there is a place in advertising where that weird like wobbly bass stuff is necessary. And there's ways to do that well, and there's ways to do that poor. And like finding what, and it's different for everyone, but finding what you believe is the good and the bad, and waiting that out, because the pool is vast. Like my emails right now with just the music that gets sent to me, I have like at any given time 400 or 500 emails from labels full of music, and a lot of it I don't get through all the time. But I take days where I just download a whole bunch, and instrumentals are very vital to me. Like anything that I get sent and it has instrumentals, I download, because you never know, the type of project I'm going to need for it. Like it can come up anytime. Like acoustic stuff is good. Electronic stuff is good. And so I get through a lot of music, and sometimes I don't get to spend a whole lot of time listening to it. But yeah, that's pretty much my what I do, is just download a lot of music and try to get through it. And I get through instrumentals quicker than I do like with the vocal stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. You guys use a lot of instrumentals Do you use vocals
Yeah.
often? Do you guys use vocals very often, or just on occasion?
Yes. And again, it goes back to the job. If there's a RAM job that there's a lot of here's another hurdle on top of the other things I spoke on before. The other hurdle is if the spot has a lot of voiceover,
mm-hmm.
and the voiceover, the tone of that voiceover of the man or woman who's delivering the voiceover will affect the music, right?
Yeah,
like, it's just like singing. If you're not singing in the right key, then the music, you'll know sonically if something's off, right? So it's just like anything else. If the VO is slow, if it's delivered slowly, or if it's too fast, or even the right timbre in the person's voice, you'll know. For me, I've gotten to the point where I can tell this music works great with this voice because of his timbre or the way he's delivering a line or whatever it is. And like, again, like Ram trucks have a real tough, outdoorsy, for lack of a better word, male sort of tone to it. So generally they're going to be using a deep voice or like a man, and finding, I know right off the bat, light acoustic stuff won't work for that.
Right. That makes sense.
There's ways of like sifting through like what your goal is just by knowing the brand.
Right.
And then you can eliminate a lot of stuff and then just kind of focus in on because you know what the brand sounds like, that's the stuff that you can go after. And RAM is just an example.
That makes sense. That's really interesting. Like delineation there to think about while you're creating, to know like where you're picking from. So we've had like a ton of questions here. I want to ask you also, sure. How do you choose producers for your custom tracks?
Again, it goes back to the job. So if the goal is, I'm not sure, are you familiar with Marmoset Music in Portland? Mm-hmm. So those guys, if like they do a lot of Jeep and Ram stuff for us, mm-hmm. because they are really good at the acoustic kick clap sort of thing that happens now, and where it's just kind of like, if you're familiar with Nathaniel and the Radcliffe, yeah. So instead of paying them like, crazy amount of money, we could just go to Marmoset and have something recreated in that world.
Right. So you just have like a handful of people like Marmoset that you reach out to have that done.
And it's really just by doing it. And again, it goes back to the job. And a lot of times we will do demos. Mm-hmm. So if there's a job and there's no real, and we're exploring like what the sonic palette is, mm-hmm. we'll have demos done. And in that case, we'll do like, 2 to 3 different music houses, give them a brief creatively of like what we're looking for. And then they'll create a few tracks for us, anywhere from 5 or 6 different tracks. And then they'll send them all to us. John and I will pass on what we think is the best, and then to the creative team. And then the best track wins, right? Like if it doesn't matter where it comes from. Yeah. If it's good, it should win. And like, if the creative team likes it enough, then it'll move on. And that's sort of how we try not to like, we try to keep bias out of it as much as possible. Like, because again, it goes back to, there's so many people you have to please in this part that
crazy, really.
You just have to let the best track win.
Yeah. Do you guys pay for your demos? Is there a demo fee for that?
Yep. We normally give a demo fee. And again, it depends on the overall budget, but it's anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 for a demo, and
Wow.
then on the back half, there's like Donor only does buyouts, so that means if you were to create a track, then Donor will just pay whatever just say, like, if the budget is 30 grand for a music track, then the demo fee comes out of that.
Yeah.
And then whatever track wins gets the remainder of that.
Right.
And then we just buy it out, so it's ours. We could put it on anything, use it as much as we want, forever to the end of time.
Got it.
Sort of how it goes.
Okay, so last question, and then I want to get to the songs to share with you.
Oh, sure.
So this last month, we had an assignment for everybody to create a cover. So something that's come up with a lot is, how close do you have to stay to the cover, to the original? Can you take a lot of leeway there? How does that work? And what's your experience with that?
Donor as a giant agency, we have to put it. So if there is a cover, and we license a publishing and get something written for us, that has to pass through a musicologist.
Yeah.
The musicologist determines if it's too close. It can't be exact. It can be close, but not note for note.
And what about it being too far? So I think sometimes they're like, I changed the he to she, and I changed the notes around. Is it still viable? If
whatever company bought the rights or bought the publishing rights to write that cover, you do whatever you want. Some, like, if you're just say you're doing a Bob Dylan song, he may not want you to change all the lyrics, but for the most part, if it's not an iconic person, then
right, they'll be fine with that.
You can but like a good example is if you're familiar with Feist,
mm-hmm.
She, on her second record, Let It Die, there is a Bee Gees cover at the end of that, and she changed the words around for that. She still had to pay money for it, but it's called Inside and Out. But she changed, I believe the Bee Gees, there's a line where he's talking about she, and she changed it to he. So, like, you can do it. I'm sure there's
flexibility for that.
But yeah, that's an example of just kind of taking, because you bought the rights and you're allowed to use it. Yeah, it's not musically, you could do whatever you want.
That makes
lyrically
sense.
I'm sure there are some artists that don't want you to go too far from it.
So that's probably artist by artist.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into some songs. We have 5 songs to share with you, and I'm excited to get your feedback because I know this is what you do all day, as we talked about, and you have such a great insight of what's going on, your pulse is what's current, and you just have such a good perspective on being an artist and in this world of music. So I can't wait. So again, it's more about feedback for, is this for sync or not? And the more honest, the better. And the first song is from Shelly, and it's called Take a Shot. And so I'm just going to put the link in the chat here so you can play it from your audio, so you have direct audio.
Oh, okay. Let's see here. Am I doing this right? Hold on. Oh, so do I have to just copy and paste it into a browser?
Yeah, or if you click it, it should open in your browser.
Oh, I'm in full screen mode. That's why.
Oh.
All right, here we go.
I came here to breathe. I came here to breathe. came here to breathe. I was stuck inside a place that I thought would make me safe. Was looking for a spot to grow my skills at my own queen, so I left you there too. Wonder where I went and just what you did do. This was never even all about.
Yeah, that one we'd have to. Again, it goes back to production, right? So like these.
Oh, you gotta be myself and to be true. You can.
Like for that, I would figure out how to make the kick drum or the drum sound better. But like the progression is pretty much what we look for in like there's nothing wrong with the progression. I would say production wise, just kind of the production sounds a little flat. Does that make sense? And find ways, like I know in different audios, depending on what this is built in, you can add some swing to the hi-hats or and just find, like it sounds too on grid, right? It just sounds like it's a 4/4 pattern, and you know the only group that can really make a grid sound awesome is Kraftwerk. And you gotta find some way to get some life in between those, like the do that do that. Does that and it's not impossible, but that's just kind of the first thing I hear. Is
that makes a lot of sense, yeah.
And without listening to the whole song, because I've gotten pretty used to doing stuff like this, is like the progression is kind of predictable. Like I know that it's verse chorus without even getting through the 3 minutes. And for me, but I'm a weird case. I listen to a lot of weird music. I like a lot of different music. And for me, it just from the beginning, I can tell where the song is where it's gonna go. So like adding some surprises or like some way to give, and whatever this artist feels, it just whatever they think is gonna give it more life.
Yeah.
I'm not a person of lyrics because I don't write lyrics in my band. I'm more of just the music person. So lyrics are hard for me. But music I can help.
I think that's really great advice. So
does any of that make sense?
Yeah, and it's really helpful. I think it pinpoints directly like where there's room for improvement and how to, with somebody's ears like yours, and you're listening to something all the time, what would make you listen to that a little longer, or think that would be
I would say, well, this sounds very much like a demo, and like mostly because the chord changes are kind of predictable. Like it's the first. There's the intro. Yeah, like it's like 15 seconds in, and you kind of already know what the progression is going to be musically. Like you kind of like just kind of I've already said that. Sorry, but. Yeah, I would just work on the chord progression. Throw a weird chord in there instead of just the descending chord progression. Just try to break out of it. Like, and I come from someone who does not write music, so all of my music is very weird. And my band tries not to stay in the same progression. Like we try to change it every few bars, or just throw something unpredictable into it. That would be, in a long-winded version, that would be my saying.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
Does that make sense? Okay.
It's good to hear something, original. It makes your ears perk.
I like weird stuff. So anything that's fun and just a weird chord progression is like I'm all about. Now that's not to say that brands don't like crazy stuff, but
right. But you wanted something that comes alive. Oh, yeah. Speaking of alive, the next track I just put was so alive.
It's like you planned it.
Yeah.
Warm breeze blows in, wakes up the curtains. The sun starts shining on my face, and that's a perfect start to a brand new day. And that's why I feel so alive.
This sounds like it would work on a Minute Maid commercial. It's super warm. Starts off a little bit like the Piano Cat song, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like you've got some wakes up the curtains, the sun starts shining on my face. Yeah, it's super warm. That could totally be in a charming it's super charming. It sounds like something that could go on a Minute Maid spot.
That's great. That's good.
It's sunny. It's got a little bit of life. Yeah, that would be a good start for sure.
Cool.
What's
nice
the
feedback.
Brand New Day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Brand New Day, yay.
Yay. All right. I love disco. Disco's the best. That's not bad. It sounds like, well, we used to have JCPenney, so that sounds, as far as lyrics are concerned, that sounds right around where JCPenney used to be. I will say that it sounds a bit like GarageBand, but there's nothing wrong with that. Because I'm pretty sure Rihanna used a GarageBand loop before. So it's not completely unheard of. Yeah, I would lyrically, I would just kind of work on, again, it falls back into the 4/4 pattern. Like, you're nothing's wrong with 4/4 at all. Don't get me wrong. It definitely sounds something that could be in a JCPenney spot back when they used to do like, not powerful, but like swaggery, kind of women vibe, like a Meghan Trainor type stuff. Again, I would just work on the production a little bit and just try to the shakers are a little hot, but I would just keep working on it. Keep trying to push your music. Just keep crafting it. Just keep writing demos, because I feel like it's all like you're in the first. It just sounds like it was the first idea, and then it ended. So like keep working on how you can just continue to make the song better. Does that make sense? Like just like, and don't get me wrong, my band stuff, like I have thousands of demos that sound like garbage, and like we just have to keep working on a song until like you think it's like, until you know that it's just like perfect, and you know, something that you didn't expect, I guess. That's what I would keep pushing for. Oh, whoops. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I'm just replying to one of the questions here on the thing. Looks like somebody's name got moved around.
It is, yes. The bass line on that is pretty warm.
Because you're a bass player, so you like warm.
I do like some warm bass. I also really love drums. And there's an endless number of drummers that are amazing to me, but drum tone is very, very important. It gives so much life to drums, instead of just like tuning a kit, like kick, snare, tom, floor tom, like having those tuned to notes does wonders. It just makes it sound very it makes any track just sound cohesive, if that makes sense. All right, Born for this.
Shining bright on the sea, but I see what you see, and just tear apart. I get so tired. Hear the crowds getting louder. They all know my name.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Like you can tell that they side chained those pads with the kick.
You've got great ears.
And that is a staple for pretty much anything right now. And that gives, but even that suction movement that the side chaining does, it just what I'm sure you know, but it ducks all that stuff that you want to, like, it just gives it a little more life. And I would continue doing that. I would probably add some low end to those synths and just layer them up. Start with and it could even be the same progression, but just layer the low, the middle, and add a little bit of high on top, and just mix those pads down, sidechain them again, and play with textures. Just don't stick with the first pad that comes out of the instrument. Like add like, you know, put some mellotron in there, add some, you know, some strings or something, just kind of layer that up however you want to do it. But there's room for improvement on that song. I would warm up those hi-hats. Those hi-hats are a little tinny, but I'm also listening to it on a computer. So
I love your feedback. It's really, really directed, and gives so much room for improvement. So thank you for taking the time to
absolutely
really get into it, you know, and you have such great ears, and I think that everybody appreciates your specific feedback.
Absolutely. I hope that I didn't discourage anyone.
No, not at all. I think it's been amazing.
I wrote a few things. Keep writing. Just write music, because I think what I truly believe is if you write music from a truly authentic place, everything will you'll get satisfaction even if you never land a sync, right? Like if you just write it in an authentic place. Also to say, writing things for sync can be difficult. So just keep writing. Don't get offended. Look musically. Look forward, right? So look what is doing really well. Find what's doing really well, and apply your own spin to it. Not that everyone's going to be able to produce a Rihanna track, but like there are country artists right now that are doing, well, country art right now, like real country, but country artists kind of sound like pop bands basically now. But that's not to say there is some value. There is someone's doing it right. So figure out what is working, and then apply those same tactics to your music, because they're popular for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just find what they're doing and try to apply those tactics to yours. Challenge yourself musically. Like if you never listen to Afrobeat music, listen to Afrobeat, because you can and just become a student of music, like not necessarily in a classroom, but just what you're listening to. Like the African music is very interesting. Italian music is very interesting. Like there's the surface stuff, and then you got to dig a little deeper to find like the true stuff and where it came from. So if there's a song and you're like, where did this song come from? Find that person, see what that person was influenced by, because I guarantee you it all stems back to like African Afrobeat stuff. Something, it all kind of links back to somewhere, and finding that somewhere and finding, finding that stuff, finding where it originated, that can, like, going back to the Beatles, like you can listen to all this stuff, all the Imagine Dragons and the ex-ambassadors of the world or whatever, the Beatles will still be on top. Like they're still the best, and you could still learn so much musically on how to write a hook. Like Paul McCartney, amazing at it. And that's probably why he's still one of the, I'm not going to start a controversy saying that he's the best, but he, like 80s Paul McCartney, Wings, just some amazing stuff in there. I think that's all. I don't have.
Thank you. I just the advice and remind your advice and personal insights that people are just exclaiming gratitude for you, and thank you for sharing that with us today and taking the time to give such great feedback.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
we've hit our hour mark, so I'm going to let you go. But I just want to really thank you for taking so much time, and everybody loves you as a guest, and we can't wait to stay in touch with you.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't get to all of the questions, but thank you so much for letting me ramble about music, because I could do this for a long time. I have many a drunken time talking about the Beatles with
Well, we'd love to have you back to continue the conversation.
Sure, no problem. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening to me ramble on.
Oh, thank you for sharing. You really had such great, inspiring insight.
Oh, good. Yes, please feel free to email me with more stuff and whatever you need. I will.
What's your best email for them to contact you?
jwettlin@donor.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah,
That's really, really, really generous of you to share.
I should talk about skateboarding. Someone wrote something about skateboarding. Do I need to do anything?
No, that's it.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Have a
Bye.
good one. Bye.